Hello and welcome to Loops and Lore with Meg. For today, I'm going to be doing the Get to Know My Taste tag, which was created by Sam from Thoughts and Tomes and Mari from My Name is Marina's. I absolutely adore both of these channels, and I've been watching them for years, like since I was on YouTube last time. And so when they brought out this tag, I knew I had to do it. One, because I think it's a really great way to connect, and two, it feels like old school booktube, which is something that I really love doing. So without further ado, there's a lot of questions, so I'm going to go through these hopefully fairly fast, so that way this can be a quick fun video, and also that way you can get to know my taste, because that's what this is all about, and finding other channels and stuff that align with how you feel about books. So question number one is, how do you rate books? And I have varied my rating scales a little bit over the years. It started off just plugging in something because something needed to be there, and so it was going purely off of enjoyment. And then I wanted to be a little bit more analytical with how I was doing it. This is around the time that I started BookTube that I started thinking that I needed to be a little bit more analytical. So around that 2016, 2017 mark. And I started like trying to analyze like the writing and everything more. And I still do that to today. From like 2018, 2019, I was using the call pile system and doing like a spreadsheet that I marked everything in. And I really got to thinking, like, if I'm rating the characters well and I'm rating the writing well, then my enjoyment is going to be matched about the same. And I felt like I was kind of rating them based on my enjoyment level anyways. So I have moved back to just a simple, what is my gut telling me this book is, and going from there. So it's more, I do think about obviously the writing and the characters, but if those are good, then my enjoyment level is going to be good. And so I just go off my gut and be like, this feels like it's about a 4-star, or this feels like it's about a 3, and so forth. So it's not like super analytical, but it is, you know, based on my feelings throughout reading the book. Number 2 is, how do you approach reviewing books? What is your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, structured? I do go through, when I'm doing a review that I film, I will go through and analyze it a lot more than I do if I'm just posting a review on Storygraph. So I typically on Storygraph will just plug in my star rating. And if I have time, I'll go through it and write out like a short little paragraph of kind of how I'm feeling. I do think about how I'm feeling about the books, but I don't always share that, just because I don't feel like I need to all the time, and some things I just keep to myself. I don't feel like everything has to be public facing when you have your own channel. There is some things that are just for me. But I do, like, when I'm going through and doing a review video, I will break down and be a little bit more structured. I do want to talk about not only the common things that people love, but also common things that people critique. Even if that's not something that I necessarily find, I do research and find what other people are saying about the book. So that way you kind of get both sides, but then you also get my thoughts on how I actually felt about the book too. So that's kind of how I do my reviews. Question number 3 is, what's the book that made you a reader? Whether it's your first favorite or the one that got you hooked, what book started it all? And I think, like most people in their late 20s to 30s, Harry Potter was a huge influence growing up. Those came out as I was basically Harry Potter's age for the books. And so that was a big deal for me. I really enjoyed those. And that really got me into where I was staying up, you know, way too late reading as a child, and in like late middle school, early high school age. And then Aragon was another series I absolutely adored around that time. I loved the Lemony Snicket's, the series of Fortunate Events at that time. Just any of the fantasy books I was getting into. I read Hobbit around the time that I was starting high school, and then when the movie started coming out, I watched the movies and really fell in love with those. So then I read the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it just, from there, it really spiraled from there. I do know that some of my reading from high school to now, like, I wouldn't necessarily think are great books, even though I loved them at the time, just because I was buying all of the super accessible books that you could get at your, like, local Walmart and that kind of thing. So I wasn't finding some of the, like, the hidden gems of the time. Like, I know if I would have read Mistborn when it came out in 2006, I would have loved it, but I didn't see it then. Like, it wasn't a thing for me then, because it wasn't like a massively sold book at the time. At least it wasn't in my town. So those kind of things definitely influenced my reading at the time. It was definitely the mainstream, main published books that you would see at like your school book fair is the books that I was reading and loving at the time. So I guess that's definitely it. And just the atmosphere of doing the AR points and stuff at the time really got me going, because I wanted to win. And that was something I could win. So that was definitely a big influence for me. I don't know if that's the case for anybody else, but I adored the AR program and I was great at it. So question number 4 is, do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate towards, or do you read pretty widely across genres? For me, it's definitely adult fantasy. I don't read a lot of YA anymore just because it doesn't hit the same way. There are some that I pick up and do still love, but I don't typically gravitate towards it. Science fiction, of course, and then also, like, I've been calling it literary sci-fi, but it's the books kind of like Emily St. John Mandel, where it feels more like a literary fiction, but has that sci-fi element to it. I love those. I love anything like sci-fi thriller, like Crouch. Those are really cool. I need to read more of those, though, because I feel like I say I love that, but I've read like 3, so, you know, I definitely could explore that more. But yeah, the grim dark fantasy I really love. Dark academia I really like. That's something that I've gotten into recently that I've loved. Of course, you can see like dragon fantasy is a great genre for me. So yeah, there's a bunch of different ones, but I do read pretty broadly, because I mean, I do read romance. That's like my palate cleanser in between big heavy fantasy series, is I'll read a fun lighthearted type thing. So yeah, I read pretty widely, but definitely focuses on those. And then when it comes to nonfiction, I love science nonfiction. That's like my go-to for nonfiction. But I do read some memoirs, and especially if they're science-based memoirs, I find those super enjoyable. So that's definitely my my go-to within the nonfiction realm. Next is 5, and it says, do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? This is really hard to pick, because I want to say both very badly. I feel like both is definitely my go-to answer for this. And it doesn't necessarily like have to be like both within the same book. Like, I love character-driven stories, but also like plot-driven stories. And I think it really depends on, again, the genre. If it's a good rom-com, I'm going to want it character-driven. I want to feel what they're feeling and, you know the characters really well. But if it's a sci-fi thriller, then the characters can be a little bit more lacking, as long as the plot is super good. So it really depends on the book. But both are good and both are fine. And I don't dislike a book because it doesn't have one or the other. It needs to have at least one of those two things, though. Question number 6 is, what is a book that you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? And, like, what's the book you love enough for everyone? For me, that's Red Rising. And I know this is not a super popular opinion in some circles. I know that you either love this or you hate this. I thankfully really love it. And it's okay. Like, I don't, get frustrated if people don't like it. I do tell them to get past the first book, though, because I feel like the first book is just such a small stepping stone to the rest of the series. But I adore this series. I think it's so much fun and heartbreaking, and I love the characters and everything about this. So it is definitely the one that I'm like, is my go-to. I can't wait to read each one. And yeah, I definitely love this enough for everybody. It's the one that I don't know. There's something about it that just connects with me as a person. I don't know what that says about me and that kind of thing, but I do really, really love this series. Question number 7 is, what is a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes just don't align? And this was really hard because there's not many, like, even Red Rising, I love that so much, but I know if you don't like it, that's fine. That's kind of like a very particular person that really loves those. And so this was really hard to like pick one that's like, oh, if you don't like this, then you won't like some of the stuff I read, because I read quite broadly. So it's like, if you don't like Red Rising, you might not like some of my sci-fi picks, but I read like quite a wide range of sci-fi, so it doesn't really make sense. But I decided to pick an author that every book I've read by them I've really loved. They are all either 4 or 5 stars. So I decided to go with Madeline Miller. If you don't like Madeline Miller's books, which is Circe, The Song of Achilles, and then Galatina is this little tiny novella, this is the one that I'm like, it's fine, it's good, but these 2 are 5-star reads. And if you don't like these, then you probably wouldn't like some of the books I read. But this is such a hard pick that it's like, I don't know, like, this is like some of my favorite books of all time. But it's a very small, like, particular subset of the genres I read. So, but if you don't like these, then our literary fantasy alignment would probably not align. I don't know how to talk about these, but these are mythical retellings and mythical, is that the right term? Greek myth retellings is what I meant to say. And they're so good. So I definitely highly recommend these 2 books. Ow, just hit my elbow. Okay, question number 8 I absolutely love, and it's, what is in your trash pocket, which is like what books or tropes or themes that you know are bad but you love them anyway. And for me, this is romantasy. I've given almost all the romantasy that I read like somewhere between 3 stars and 4 stars. There's definitely some that I've DNF'd, but there's some about them that are just fun. And even though they are not the best written, they don't have the best characters, like, they are not perfect, they're still fun to read, and I've continued reading them. Doesn't mean that they're good, but they're fun. So I think romantasy is definitely within that genre. But there are some popular ones that completely miss for me, and they do go in the trash. But some of them stay in my little trash pocket that I absolutely love them and hate them at the same time. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that if present immediately turns you off from a book? I think for me, sometimes if stuff is shocking just to be shocking and doesn't have a like reason for it to be in the book, that throws me off. I don't necessarily stop reading immediately because I give it a chance. The other one is anything to do with like kids and harming kids. I can't deal with that as someone who has 2 kids. So I typically, if that's even mentioned in the synopsis or anything like that, I typically do not pick those up at all. Just because I don't want to feel that and don't want to have that in my head going into books. So yeah, that that would be my turn-offs. Question number 10 is, what is a strong opinion you have about a book that has released in the last year, whether it's overrated, underrated, or you just need to share? And for me, I am going to talk about this book right here, The Mercy of the Gods by James S.A. Corey. So I am worried that I am not going to love this book. I am worried that I might not even finish this book. And that makes me sad because Expanse is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. The first book in that series was 5 stars for me, and I need to finish the rest of the series and continue it on. I was just giving it a little bit of time between when I watch the show to when I read the books, so that way I can be more of that a little bit out of my head. So that way when the plot points happen, I'm like, ooh, yeah, I remember that. Instead of being like waiting on each of them. But anyways, I read probably about a third of this via audio, and I DNF'd it, or paused it according to Storygraph. until I got the physical book, because I felt like I needed to be able to physically see the character names and stuff like that to try to keep some of it straight in my head. But what I was reading, I was not enjoying. So I'm really hoping that when I go back to this and restart it and do the more immersion reading where I'm seeing it and hearing it, I will get into this and really love it. But I am worried I am going to hate it. I'm worried that it is not as good as the Experience series, and that it is just going to be a big flop. And that would make me so sad, because I was so excited for this. And I wanted to, jump on it right away, so that way I wasn't behind. And I was like keeping up with the series as it came out. And I don't know if I'm going to do that. So that is my hot take on the 2024 releases. I am afraid this is not as good as the Expanse series, and that has me worried. Question number 11 is what do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it the prose style, themes, voice structure, or something else? For me, it's a good mix. I do love some good prose. Such as Madeline Miller, such as Laini Taylor. I have been waiting for a Laini Taylor book to come out since the last one came out in 2019 maybe was when the Muse and Nightmares came out. Erin Morgenstern has great writing. I love V.E. Schwab's modern day prose. Some of her older stuff I still love, but it's not her prose that stands out to me in those. So yeah, I like a little bit of a lyrical purple prose, but it can't go too far. If it goes too far, then I am out. It is too much, but I like a little bit. And I think anyone that has a very clear voice in their writing, that you can tell who has written it, has a good enough writing style that I connect with. I think another one that has a really clear voice is Emily St. John Mandel. I really have loved everything I've read by her. So those are some of the more writing specific ones that I love. But it doesn't necessarily have to have a really good writing structure for me to enjoy it. But it definitely helps. For sure helps. Question number 12 is, how do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead? Do you mood read? Do you follow external factors such as hype or recommendations or arcs? Most of the time I am a mood reader, which is why TBRs have not been happening, because I don't like telling myself what I have to read. I tend to then not read, because I'm I don't want to read what I picked for myself, so I just won't read. So I'm definitely a mood reader. It really depends on what I can get from the library as far as audiobook goes, because I try to get most of my books where I can immersion read, and so that's been my focus this year, is reading as many books as I own as I can, and therefore getting the audiobook to go with them really helps with that. I am a huge immersion reader. That's the way I prefer to read nowadays, because then I can really feel like I focus in and can really get every detail of the book, because you're getting the really great audiobook narrative experience paired with actually reading and seeing the books and the words and the character names. So yeah, I think it's just whatever I'm in the mood for, plus whatever I can have available from library, or if I have credits on Everand and that kind of thing to use. Question number 13 is, where do you get inspiration for your booktube content? What sparks your video ideas, whether it's other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? It's a little bit of all of those. I definitely have been trying to get into more of the challenge vlog type of reading, because that's one thing that I've really enjoyed to watch and I am really enjoying making. So I'm kind of doing my own take on those. I typically will do 2 books to make a vlog, and do in this versus type of scenario. Which has been really fun, and I've been crocheting granny squares to go along with the winner of the books, so you can see some of those there. So that's been really, really fun, and that's a way that I can do it without it being too overwhelming, because I cannot read 15 books in 2 weeks. That's just not something that I can do, but I can read too. So that's kind of how I've been taking inspiration from the world of booktube and creating it to my own space. I also love crochet, so therefore I've been trying to weave that into my channel as much as I can. So like my standalone book reviews, I have been going through and crocheting a granny square for those as well, which has been really fun. But yeah, I tend to look through, and if something inspires me, I try to make it my own. I don't ever want to feel like I'm copying exactly one for one to other people, just because I grew up with an art background and that kind of thing, and so you're ingrained that like one of my favorite books from art school was Steal Like an Artist, by, I think it's Austin Kleon. Is that the name? Maybe something like that. It's very close. But he basically, the whole book is like a little short, almost like a comic, because it's drawings and text with it. But his whole point is that you can take other ideas from other people, but you have to manipulate it enough to where it's your own idea at the end of the day. Like, it needs to stand up on its own and not be a carbon copy of someone else, but it can be influenced by other people. And I definitely take that at heart with everything that I do. So I hope that nobody watches a video of mine and be like, oh, you just stole that idea from so-and-so. And it's like, okay, hopefully you see my videos and you're like, oh, they were inspired by this, but it's their own thing. So I definitely, that's how I look at content with on here. I definitely want to, like I said, I want to be inspired by 2017, 2018 booktube again. I want to do more tags. I want to do more of like my Tome Infinity readathon. I'm bringing that back, and I just want to do more stuff like that. I don't know what the cat just did, but it dropped something. So I would love to do like top 5 Wednesdays again. Like, I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff that used to happen that were just so much fun to film, and it kind of gave you this idea of, even if you didn't have ideas, like you could look to those kind of things, and that was really, really great. So I'm hoping to do like a little bit of the more like newer age challenge vlog type content, but also pair it with some of the old school booktube, and hopefully that's what my channel feels like going forward. And yeah, that's my plan anyways. Question number 14 is, if you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? And that's a book that you think deserves more attention, and why? I'm gonna have to think about it. Okay, so I've picked my book, and I think it should be The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I adore this book. I just read it last month, so it's my newest 5-star read. It is so good. I really loved how I could not predict a single thing that was going to happen in this book, and that's very rare. Like, I feel like most of the times if I get like an inkling of what's happening, I can kind of figure it out, which is also fun, but it's also like really cool to have a book that like leads you one way and then switches back to another. And this one did that throughout the whole thing, and it was really, really good. I cannot wait to continue on this series with this. I have bought the other 2 books already because I could not wait, and so this one is definitely going to be continued on pretty soon. But yeah, I would love for this to go viral, and I think it has like its niche audience that do recommend it from time to time. I do see it every once in a while, but it's not like one of the viral books that is constantly talked about. So this one is my pick for going viral. I feel like so many of the others that I would pick have already had their viral moments, so I feel like that one needs it. Question number 15 is, what are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? This is so hard because I've just started back on booktube like the last 3 to 4 months. I am still trying to find everything and everyone. And it's funny because I have found that there are booktubers I really love to watch that I don't necessarily read the same books as them. Which makes that kind of hard. But I still really love their content. I get so many recommendations from Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, who created this tag. I think that her fantasy recommendations typically are ones that I love. I get a lot of my like what I call sci-fi literary type of recommendations from Books and Lala. Just because that is something that she reads a lot of, and I always find those kind of interesting ones that she picks from there. I feel like Kat from Brazilian Reviews is someone that I have constantly, over the past few years, read similar books to, and we can talk about them and stuff like that. There's so many, like, it's so hard. My best friends, Jessica and Christina, used to have a channel, Game on Tomes, and I, of course, read a ton of books from them and give recommendations from them. I still wish they made content. I tell them that all the time. But they're busy people, and they don't have the bandwidth to do it. But, yeah, with them being in my book club, we constantly recommend books to each other. So, yeah, I feel like most like 90% of the books that are recommended to me and that I pick up come from my book club. I have a really good in real life book club that we go through and suggest things back and forth all the time. So yeah, I need to find more booktubers, which is why I'm doing this tag and why I'm going to watch a bunch of people doing this tag, because I need to find more people that are in my lane. And I would like to find more smaller booktubers that are in my grouping of loves, so that way we can kind of connect on the books that we love and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that is it. I don't know, do we still tag people in these? I don't think so. I think with this one, like, if you're watching it and you want to do it, please do. And I hope that you enjoy this video and get to know some of my taste for reading. So that is it for me. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. So happy reading, stay cozy, stay crafty. Bye!